As we made clear in the previous session, there are patterns that were noticed when researchers analyze how people scan content. These patterns mainly depend on the purpose of the readers, their commitment, and the formatting of the content. So if someone is reading a blog that has headings, it's going to be different from a blog written without headings. If the information is urgent for the reader, it is found that this affects the behavior of the reader. So let's dive into what happens and what patterns were noticed and what do they mean for us. The first pattern, and the one that is most widely known, is the F pattern. As you can see, the heat map of this pattern makes a shape that is like an F letter. This F is usually the first lines of the first paragraph, then some other lines of a next paragraph, then first words of some of the remaining paragraphs or lines, as the users try to scan the content quickly. This pattern is usually followed when content is not very readable and has only paragraphs of text without headings. Sometimes this is usual, with like a small news article, but in most cases you don't want to write 500 or 1,000 words just like a newspaper. Sometimes this is usual, like with a small news article, but in most cases you don't want to write 500 or 1,000 words without headings, just paragraphs, because the reader won't be able to know what the content is really about without reading the headings. So what happens is that the reader is going to start reading the top of the content and the first words and follow this F pattern that we follow. You surely don't want to make your people read the content you write like this, because in many cases they'll just scan very quickly and leave. Even if they're interested in some part of the content, they probably won't be able to find it. As we can see on the map, people are reading just the first lines, then they are going much faster with only first words, then reading nothing of the bottom paragraphs because they are already bored. This means a few things for us. The first is that the first part of your content is critical. No matter what is the type of your content, your reader will decide whether to continue or not based on the first part of your content. While doing this again, I'm reminding you that you don't need to play games here. Give them what they want as early as possible and then offer extra details. People are really busy and they don't want to be waiting to get the specific part they are here for too long. As you notice, the people go down, they read lists, then they just leave. This scanning process happens very quickly, a matter of seconds. So this is just our mental behavior and we can't change it. The second thing we learn from this pattern is how to avoid it. Because as I said, it won't give people the ability to have specific answers or pick a specific part which is bad. To avoid this pattern, you need to make your content readable, and we will dive much into this topic in the upcoming sessions. So let's see the other patterns first. The second pattern we have here is what researchers of Nielsen Norman Group, the company behind these researches, have called the layer cake scanning pattern. People follow this pattern in reading online when they read content that has headings and subheadings. So this is very famous and widely used. Naturally, the most places that people look at this sort of content is headings and subheadings. This pattern shows how essential those headings and subheadings are for your content, as people could easily know in detail what your content is about and accordingly if they need to read or not, and if they need to read one of your sections or not. It also shows once again the importance of readability for your content. So what we learn from here is that you really need to use headings whenever possible, which is in most cases. Let's move to the third pattern. The third pattern is actually not a certain pattern, but a group of patterns that have been called spotting patterns by researchers. As their name suggests, they depend on spotting, and this spotting happens with formatted content. So when people read content that is well formatted, the places they will look at most will be bulletins, lists, bold text, underlined text, color text, numbers, specific words, headings, subheadings, and so on. This is how people begin to scan formatted content, and nothing can be done to stop them. It is actually better than having people use the F pattern, as there's a bigger chance in attracting the reader's attention at some spot of your content and letting every reader find what they are searching for. So this skimming pattern is just what happens with all of us, unless we are committed to read the content, which is the last case and the last pattern for today. When readers consume content that they are committed to consume, like something that they really care about, maybe something that will help them in their career, something that is about a really important buying decision, and it comes at the time that they are not distracted, they can really read content with a so-called committed reader pattern. Like I mentioned before, you can assume this case because you can guarantee readers will be committed. Also, using formatted text that is readable, which will lead to readers following spotting patterns or layer cake scanning patterns, will be much better than writing just paragraphs that feel boring and will make people use the F pattern to try desperately to scan the content. So that's everything that I want you to learn about online content reading patterns. So summing up what we learned from these patterns, right here in a few points we can say, readability is really important and it should be a major concern for content writers. Headings specifically must be used whenever possible. They make the content look less boring and help the reader navigate it quickly or pick some parts when they want. Sometimes you write a piece of news or something similar to it that is small and doesn't need headings, and that's totally okay. But in most cases, you need to take advantage of headings. The first paragraph and the first words are essential to hook the reader and attract the attentions of the readers. Give them a glimpse of the content quality and attract them to read more content. The title will also determine the level of excitement of the reader about your content, and accordingly their level of commitment. So you really need to get the reader excited with your title, while still offering quality content that delivers on the promise. We will get much more on this in the upcoming session.